Diamond City Studios, is that right?
No, just Diamond Studios.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, Diamond City Publishing, that's my publishing company.
Okay, I'm thinking of Diamond City Drive also.
Yeah.
Okay. But you named it for Diamond City, right? Or
Yeah, that's where my grandmother was born, on Diamond, in actually Diamond City, which was a little place over in the water that is sunk now, over by the Cape.
Oh, okay. Let me move this closer to you. Which grandmother was that? Because I was going to ask you about your grandmother to start with. Was that, 'cause I guess what I want to say is that, from what I understand, you have music coming to you from both sides of your family, it sounds like to me. And
Yeah, my grandmother, who was my father's mother, she sang in the church, well, I don't know, so many years.
and what was her name?
Her name was Sarah.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, on my mom's side, the Rose family, you know, there's a lot of history of music and various talents coming from that side.
Right. There sure is. What was the story? You were just telling me the other night about waking up and hearing the people sing in your house. I thought that was a nice story.
Well, that was kind of a strange thing for me. I'm not sure the age that I was. I was probably 12 or 13, I guess, in my mom's house. And I woke up one morning and heard like a record playing of my grandmother, my mom, and my uncle, which they would sing together.
Was that your Uncle House?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
he sang with them some, and there was another lady, I can't remember who that was. But anyway, I think at this particular time when I woke up, what I was hearing was my mom and my grandmother. And they were singing a song about heaven, and in a little while I'll probably think of the name of the song. And I thought it was the prettiest thing I ever heard in my life. And I got up and got dressed and went to look for that record because I wanted to play it, you know. And there was no such record to be found. And I asked Mom, she said, well, you know, I don't have a record like that. So it was kind of strange.
Do you think it was them singing that you heard?
Well, I know exactly that it was them singing because I recognized them and I knew the song because they had sung it before. But this time it was like it was, you know, had been done professionally, and I was just wanting to hear the record.
Wow.
But there was no such record.
Is that your grandmother Sue Rose you're speaking of?
This was my grandmother Sarah Nelson.
Okay. Oh, that was Sarah
Yeah,
Nelson.
this was my
I
dad's
see.
mom.
I see. So she said, did Sue Rose also sing?
I don't recall ever hearing Grandma Sue sing specials, but she sang, of course, with the congregation. I mean, she could sing, but as far as getting up and singing specials, I don't recall ever hearing her do that.
And they were both of those families in the Free Grace Church?
Yes,
too?
yeah, at that time they were in the Free Grace Church.
Wow. I was just wondering if you had any recollections about Sue Rose, because I've been fascinated about how talented and how much music all her children had, and I just kind of wondered if you had any insight into how that all happened.
I really honestly don't know all of the ins and outs. The biggest part about Grandma Sue was that her whole family seemed to revolve around her. She was certainly a spiritual leader of that whole family, and I think she was an encouragement to the kids, especially those that were involved in music, and especially Christian music, because she was a devout Christian herself, and I have seen her more than once, you know, just cry and praise the Lord because of her relationship with God. And so she was kind of like she was a spiritual leader for that family, and everybody looked up to her and just sort of rallied around her and looked to her for guidance.
Wow.
Quite a woman.
Yeah. Sounds it. Wow. And let's see. And well, now your mother. Do you know? I've heard her on tape play the piano and all that. Do you know when or how she learned to play?
I think Mom started playing at a very early age in church. she just picked up piano, taught herself. She's self-taught, was self-taught, and began to play in the church at a fairly early age. I'm not sure of that age, probably early teens, and just stuck with it. And she was in our immediate family, that she was kind of like Grandma Sue was to her family. She was the spiritual leader and the go-getter and the pusher. You know, she saw somebody getting out of line, she didn't mind just taking us down and talking to us, trying to straighten us out. But of course, she did it with love, and that was great. She was a wonderful woman.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't meet her. What how did you, or when did you start playing music yourself, or do you think she was involved in you becoming the musician you are?
I think that Mom must have recognized early on that the Lord had given me a talent. We didn't. I'm sure she didn't know at that time to what extent, you know, or just what. But she figured out that I could carry a tune, and when she did, she began to encourage me and lead me on into trying to develop that. And of course, that was in the church. Matter of fact, I sang my first song in church when I was 6, so I can remember, you know, with her and my uncle, Hallis Rose, they backing me up, singing. You know, that was quite a thing, I guess, for a kid to be able to sing and have people to sing along with him harmony, and that kid stay on tune somewhat, you know, without straying. But you know, I can remember many times, and the bad part about it was that I said bad part about it. Well, for me as a kid, the toughest part about it was that all the folks in the church, when their people would die, you know, they would look to me and Mom and Hallis to sing to the funerals. So I sang to probably more funerals than many grown-ups today, and that was tough, you know. And sometimes, you know, as a kid, you see other people, you know, crying and in sorrow, and sometimes, you know, that would kind of get to me. But somehow or another, we would get through it. And
oh yeah, it must be hard to hold it.
It was tough, you know. But I guess the Lord had me in school and was trying to bring me along.
Yeah.
So that's how I started, you know. And it's because of Mom, that's for sure. I mean,
yeah,
encouraging me to and coaching me to do it and making me do it at times.
Yeah.
And I'm glad she did.
Would she? Do you remember practicing and stuff, or when you first went to church at the
Yeah,
house and stuff?
I can remember, you know, just sitting around with Mom would be playing the piano, you know, and she was teaching me these songs, you know. I would have to hear it. I've never been much of a reader, you know. I could read, but I would learn stuff by hearing, and that's how I would get these songs down. She would just sing them over to me, and I would pick them up, and then she'd start adding her parts.
Wow, isn't that something? Wow. What were some of the songs that you remember?
The first song that I ever sang in church was a song called "He'll Be Waiting."
Oh, okay.
And I'll never forget it. I beat him the first time. I was scared to death. But you know, as I figured out that people, you know, like to hear it, and they weren't too tough the next time. Matter of fact, I went many years away from the church, and the first song that I sang in the church at the age of about 21 was that same song. The first song I sang the first time.
Really?
Yeah.
Coming back to the church.
When I was coming back, that was the song that I sang first.
That's great. That's really your song. What were there other music around the house, or it just sounds like there must have been so much music when you were growing up. Or I mean, when did you start playing instruments and all that kind of things like that?
Well, I remember when I was in the 3rd grade, Mom wanted me to learn to play piano, and so she sort of talked me into taking piano lessons, and I got so bored with it. I told Mom, I said, Mom, I just don't want to do that, because, you know, the boys back then would kind of make fun of you, you know, if you're playing piano. Everybody was wanting to play sports and stuff, and here I was taking piano lessons.
That's right.
So they was kind of making fun of me, and I just didn't want to do it. But see, what was happening all along is that I had begun to just pick a little bit on the piano and just sit down and play. So I was beginning to learn chords. I never could really play a piano real well, but just chord for the fun of it, sitting around. And it paid off later on, and we'll probably get to that part in a little bit, and I'll tell you how that happened that I started playing keyboard.
And then what about guitar?
Guitar, I did have an uncle, Paul Kirkland. He married my aunt, and they lived next door. And he played guitar. He had an acoustic. And I told my granddaddy, this was Granddaddy Horace, not Grandma Sue's,
Not Tom.
not my granddaddy Tom's. I told him, I said, now if you'll buy me a guitar, I'll learn to play. And he bought me a Sears Roebuck Silvertone, just a little old cheap thing. And in just a little while, I was beginning to hold chords, So they saw that, I had a kind of a knack for play, and a little bit later on, they got me a little better one.
How old were you when you got that?
I was probably 7 years old when I got my first one. But see, right after that, though, what really got me wanting to play a guitar was Elvis.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I see.
See, that was kind of a unique thing. He was very different than anybody else. And of course, the church people, they didn't care too much for stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of tough for me to follow after things of that nature because of the religious background and the beliefs of my family and stuff. But still, I had to find out for myself what they were experiencing in the church, and so I was kind of drawn aside. My sister used to bring some girls home from school, and she would make me sing "You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog" with my guitar. I would just beat it and just have a time like in copying Elvis.
Yeah,
so
because they like that.
they like that.
I see. How'd your mom feel about that?
I don't think she thought too much of it.
Yeah.
Mom was a smart, wise woman, and she knew that sooner or later, I would have to reach that point when I was going to make my commitment, and that she wasn't going to be able to do anything about that. It was going to be up to me, just like it is up to everybody else.
Right.
And so she still encouraged me in playing, because she always felt her and my grandma told me many times. She says, "Well, one of these days, you'll see the light, and you'll start using your talents for the Lord." And they were right, but it was a long time after that.
I see. So, because I know you played in a rock and roll band, so it seems like that side of things kind of, I don't know if the music is what you can point to, and
it was the music. After Elvis, I wanted to be like Elvis. Be able to play and have what I thought that he had all the fame and the happiness and all that kind of stuff. And so as a kid, that's what I wanted. I felt like a guitar could give that to me. But after that came a group called the Beatles, and they really set me off because I said, "No, I want my own band."
Oh, okay. And how old were you when you got a group together?
Well, I started playing rhythm with. There was a couple of Marines that came down here and would play instrumentals to a cafe at the end of the island. I think it was Coach's Restaurant or something like that. They called it. It was a little cafe. And somebody had told them that I could play, rhythm. I didn't know anything about playing lead or picking or any of that, but I could hold chords and strum. And so I kind of started playing with them, just backing them up, slip up there at times and just play with them. Then there was another group down here on the east end of the island that was called the Reverbs. And this was, local guys, Tommy Lewis, a fellow across the bridge, Natalie Smith. Let's see who else was in it. I think Donnie Brooks came along after that playing bass, but I started playing with them, and then after that, I kind of went my own group. I went a vocal group. This was they didn't do too much singing. They got one guy. Matter of fact, my brother-in-law now, he started singing a little bit with them, and then I would sing some with him. But we just got a couple guys.
And was it? Oh, I'm sorry. What kind of music would you do?
That was just popular music.
Yeah.
I don't know how to categorize it now. It was just music that was played on the radio.
Right.
I guess back then it would be considered rock, but today it'd be very light rock at that,
Yeah.
because things have changed.
You played electric guitar?
I played electric guitar.
Okay. And so you're saying you started singing some with them?
Yeah, started singing some with them, and of course the Beatles, when they came along, I thought it was the greatest thing in the world to hear those guys harmonizing a little bit, and I that was the thing that I liked about them, that they would at times have some what I would consider to be real decent harmony. And
Beatles. That's right. And you like them because of their singing. And that's what inspired you.
Yeah. I like them because of the they had a unique way of playing, number one, and they did have a different sound, and they blended well, I thought, together, and that really got me to thinking that I would like to have a band like that, And so I started learning all the Beatles songs, and we get all the records, and just that was it. That was the only group I'd listened to at that particular time.
Wow. And did you start your own band at that same time?
Yeah, we did. We had a group called the East Brogues.
East Brogues?
Brogues, because of our brogue, the way we talk,
Okay.
And it was myself, a guy named Brian Yeomans, and another fellow, Jonathan Willis, and a Morris Willis. Now, of those guys, Morris, he later played with me in the Mudflap, the group that we had back in the 60s.
Were all those boys from the island?
Yeah, all were from, except Morris. Now, he lived to Williston, which is not too far from here, but he has roots here.
Yeah. Were you in high school at that point, or how?
I think at that point we were. Yeah, we had hit high school, and
where would you guys get together and practice?
My dad had a shed out back at the house, and we would go back there and practice every chance we'd get. My brother was a sports nut. He was a good athlete in high school, and he'd be pulling on me to come play basketball with him when I'd be playing a guitar with the group, So and he didn't like that because he didn't think much of me playing. He wanted me to play sports, but music was kind of a thing back then. We'd get back down, we'd get all kinds of complaints from all over the neighborhood, noise, everybody complaining,
Oh boy.
and so we kind of got in hot water a couple times about that, but we just kept right on.
And now what happened from there? That you got another group going, or you started playing around
Well,
in the area?
this group that was playing behind the house turned into the Mudflap. A couple of the other guys had dropped out, and we picked up a few more. Jimmy Amsbacher, Donnie Brooks was playing bass, Morris Willis playing rhythm, and I was playing lead, and three of us were singing.
Wow.
And that's how we stayed for a long time.
Wow. Now, you have to explain to me how you got that name.
Well, Jimmy Amsbacher is the one that thought of it. We were traveling, we were going somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where we were heading, but a truck, big 18-wheeler came by us, and on the back it had mud flaps on, and I think it had mud flap on the bottom. And I'm not positive about the Huckleberry, but Jimmy said, "You know what, we ought to call this group the Huckleberry Mudflap." And so we said, "All right." So that's what we kept.
It's funny.
Yeah.
I was wondering if it had anything to do with there being huckleberries or anything.
No, I don't remember being on
huckleberries.
Huckleberries.
Yeah, it just came to
Now, actually, there used to be a lot of huckleberries here on the island. I've been a many times with my grandmama on her apron, and we go picking huckleberries, wild, and she'd make huckleberry dumplings, best things I ever eat in my life.
Wow.
So it may have been a unconscious suggestion on his part when he came up with huckleberry. I don't know.
So how many years did y'all play together?
Let me see. Probably about 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
I'd say something like that with that group.
And did you start traveling, or what?
Yeah,
were you out of high school at that point, or?
We started traveling when we were later on in high school. You know, in 12th grade, I think. Really started getting out weekends. But after high school, we got an agent and a manager,
Wow.
and they started booking us. And so we went all over, Miami, New Orleans, Buffalo, Canada,
My goodness.
Kentucky. Not too much out west, but it was mostly just up the eastern seaboard from bottom to top, you know.
Goodness.
But we stayed busy.
Were you driving all over?
We drove most of the time. We did fly some. We got to the place toward the last hour where we flew some. We had roadies that would take the truck and carry the equipment. They'd have it all set up for us. When we got there, we'd come flying in, you know, and just go play. And when it was all over with, we'd hop the plane, come on home. They'd drive.
That's something. What sort of places did you play?
Well, it ranged from dives to colleges, some real nice club. We was in a club in Buffalo. 2 parts to it. Up top was kind of like a comedian type lounge, and they had, like, when we were there, Jerry Lewis was up top, and we were the band downstairs.
My goodness.
So we played in some nice places as well as some dives.
Did you write original songs?
We started out doing cover tunes, and in about not too long after we got going good, we just decided that we was tired of being like the Beatles or any of those other guys, and we wanted our own sound, our own thing. So we started writing all of our material, and we did nothing but original stuff.
Well, I have to hear some. My one other question is, what was I going to ask about y'all? I've heard of, is it part of beach music? I've heard of beach music, that there was a whole big rock music scene or something on the coast. Somebody was telling me about this, and I wondered if your all's group was considered that.
Beach music, we did not play beach music.
Oh, okay.
We were a different style, and we didn't get to too many of them clubs. However, we did have a song that did real well. It was played in probably 4 or 5 countries, and I'm not exactly sure how high it went on the charts, but they tell me that it was, if it didn't hit 40, it was right at a top 40 tune, which was the one that kind of got us going good.
And what was that?
It was a song called Blue Surf.
Okay.
But now, this particular song wasn't really a reflection of what the group was. It was more along the line of a beach tune. So by us having that, this got us booked in a lot of places, a lot of beach clubs, and
I see.
and you know, once we got to going, they said, "Well, man, this is not beach music," you know.
See.
But we converted a few people to our style.
I see. What was beach music like? Maybe I just have to hear it.
Well, have you ever heard the song something like, let's say, "Up on the Roof"? That would be considered, or "My Girl," you know, they would be considered beach tunes. Of course, you know, they range to a little faster, a little different tempos, but that was the kind of stuff
I see.
that beach music was. We were doing more of a British type sound. You know, the British invasion. That was more like we were doing.
Yeah, I understand. Well, look, might be working on the levels here. All right, we're back at Diamond Studios. We've been away for a while, and we had been talking about rock and roll and your band, the Mudflaps. Another thing that needs to get on the DAT tape, by the way. Could you tell me about how when and how you decided to stop doing the rock and roll? And did that have to do with you coming back to the island and back to the church, or were you ever away from the church when you were doing rock and roll?
Yeah, that was, I was just totally away. I to be honest with you, I really couldn't tell you a time and a place when I had actually started thinking along those lines, because I believe that all during that era, with my background, my family background, and the teachings that I was exposed to in early years, I think it had followed me all through the rock and roll era. And in my mind, I knew that in my heart, I would have to quit that if I ever really wanted to totally commit myself to God. I would have to give my time and talents doing, for Him. So I think that kind of kept me on the run for as long as I was. I really was awakened somewhat down in Augusta, Georgia one night when we were spending an evening with B.J. Thomas, and that following morning we left. Our agent was ahead of us, and we left to come back home. We'd been out a week, and it was raining, and our agent was driving ahead of us. He was in his Cadillac, and we was at that time driving a van. It was a new one. We hadn't had it long, and the rain was kind of coming down. I knew we was getting, going a little bit fast. This other guy was driving. I was laying down in the back seat, and I felt the van slip a little bit, and I raised up on my elbows to look to see what was going on, and maybe tell the driver, it needs to slow down just a little bit. And by that time she went sideways in the road, and she slid, down the highway a while and caught her bumper on a guardrail, and it flipped her around down an embankment. There was a priest that was behind us, and he said that the van turned over at least 5 times.
Oh no.
One of the guys, 2 guys were thrown out. Nobody, lost their lives, but the drummer broke his arm. He had compound fractures in his arms.
Jimmy Adams back?
No, this was another drummer.
Okay.
And I don't know, took probably 100 stitches in his head.
Wow.
The other guy broke his back. And then after that, I remember calling home and telling the family was stranded in Augusta, Georgia. By the way, when they took us to the hospital, I think they were just yanking our chains, but we had long hair at that time, and we was kind of rebels, and thought of as rebels anyway. And those doctors said, we're not going to treat you until you get a haircut. And they kind of, just kind of made fun of us, and we was in a strange place. And
oh boy.
We finally got out of there.
Oh my goodness.
And I remember my mama telling me, she said, the Lord is talking to you and trying to get your attention. And I think that was the beginning of it. When the group finally got back, we were knocked out of playing for a month or so. But I was the only one that returned playing. The rest of them went on to different things.
Wow.
But I said, hey, I'm going to keep this up. Still that rebellion, I guess, and I.
There was a different, just to clarify, you said that you got up with a different group, or a whole different group came in with you?
It was
Yeah.
a lot of them were still local, but it was different
Yeah.
different people after that,
Yeah.
and not too long after that. Well, one of the guys did come back to the group,
Mhm.
but shortly
Mhm.
after that, I just decided I'd had enough, and I quit.
Mhm. So you didn't stay with it that much longer after that. That was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, did you feel it sounded from what you were saying before that your mother and folks at home they didn't put a lot of pressure on you to
No.
stop doing that sort of
No,
thing.
they realized that this was something that I was going to have to do, choices that I was going to have to make. However, I wasn't around them much by what they didn't remind me of that. But for the biggest part, I think they, in a sense, they were had felt pretty good at times because we were doing well, but I don't think that they really liked me doing well in that field.
That's right. Yeah. And you said when you got sick of the life you're living, did you come back to Harkers Island?
I did.
Uh-huh.
What happened was one night was in Moorhead, and of course about that time, I was just so tired of going the places I was going and involved in the things that I was involved in, knowing that I was just going in the wrong direction, And I believe, and I really honestly believe, if I hadn't had my life turned around, that I probably wouldn't be here today.
Wow.
But that night in Moorhead, we decided to go home kind of early, and about halfway home, I just had this awful urge to go see Mom. And when we went in Mom's house, Mom began to realize what was taking place, that I'd come to the end of the road, and I was aware that she had prayed that I would be for so long. And on about 12 o'clock, we just got down to a little couch and prayed and asked God into our lives. And when we got up, it was just different, and I changed from that point on. I called my agent.
Wow.
And I told him what had happened, and that we had a bunch of bookings, we had contracts
Wow.
that we'd signed, but somehow or another they worked it out, and I finally broke free of it all.
Yeah. That's wonderful. My goodness. And then how did you just continue to write songs and they were gospel songs, or did you put down music for a while, or how did you come to start the singing?
It wasn't long after that I'd started taking my guitar to church and just playing a little bit with the choir, and before long, of course, the church encouraging and getting me more involved. I just sort of picked up the momentum and started writing gospel songs and singing. And then my mother and my wife and myself, we went into song evangelism for I guess 6-7 years, something like that. And we traveled Indiana. We stayed busy in Indiana and Pennsylvania. Then the kids come along. We made it a little hard to travel, and we just kind of stayed around here.
Right. How old were you when you I meant to ask, when you said you quit the rock and roll? How old would you reckon you were?
21, 22, something like that.
Okay. I know I backtracked a little bit, but so in evangelism, how much were you all on the road doing that? That's a
Full
lot
time.
of travel. Really?
Yeah, we'd be
Wow.
gone 6 weeks at a time.
Wow.
And,
Is that when you began recording records?
yeah.
Is that-
Mhm.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. How did you come to make your first record? How did that come about?
Let's see. I'm trying to think. It's been so long. I don't know. We just started singing in a church. First off, in the church, and before long, the local churches started calling us to come and sing to their church. So it began to kind of develop, and so people started asking us, have you got a record? We'd like to have a record. And we made our first record in Bailey, North Carolina. It was a little studio, not much to it. But the ironic thing was that we had done demos as a rock and roll band in that same little place.
Oh my goodness.
So I kind of knew the fella,
Right.
the engineer there. But that was the first time we went in as a gospel.
That was, and it was you, your mother, and your wife.
Yeah, and my aunt's son played drums.
Who's that now?
Paul Kirkle.
Paul.
He played drums for us.
Right.
And a guy out of our church, Kenneth Whiter, played bass.
Mm-hmm.
So there was actually 5 of us.
Mm-hmm. That sounds wonderful. Did you go to all denominations of churches? I mean, it wasn't just Holiness or Wesleyan?
No, we was open to anybody that would have us. We stayed busy primarily with Nazarenes,
Mm-hmm.
Wesleyans, and Church of Christ and Christian Union in Pennsylvania, and some independent holiness churches. Kept us busy.
Wow. That's wonderful.
Seen a lot of country.
I bet. Did you sing at camp meetings?
Yeah.
That sort of thing?
We sang to once we got kind of in that circle.
Mm-hmm.
Then various denominations, of course, would have camp meetings once a year, and we sang to some big ones. Pine Creek Camp in Pennsylvania, which I don't know how many people that place could hold, but I've seen it packed. Just running out the sides, and then of course Indiana. We've done some camps in Indiana and also North Carolina. Just had some great times on it. A lot of fun.
And they have a lot. I've never been to a camp meeting. I mean, I know Hallis Rose and Sister Anna went to one. And is it a lot of different musicians or groups that come to?
Well, normally what they do, they bring in special speakers and also special singers. So basically, other than choir singing, then the singers they bring in does all the special singing.
Wow. So y'all were busy.
Yeah.
My goodness. I wanted to ask you about writing songs. I know you've written rock and roll songs and gospel. Would you call them gospel songs?
Yeah.
And how do you go about doing that? How do you go about writing a song?
Amy, I don't know. I don't have enough ability and skill to do it.
But you've done it so much.
Well, I would have to say that the Lord had given them to me. All the bad ones I wrote. If there's any good ones, He wrote.
I see.
But it's a strange thing. For instance, we were in a revival in Pennsylvania. We had scheduled to record in Madisonville, Kentucky.
Oh gosh, I lived there a while.
Is that right?
Yeah.
At let's see, what was the name of that studio? Anyway, Rusty Goodman owned it. Owned the studio. He was with the Goodmans. And I didn't have the material until that revival the following week, and I wrote the whole album that week in revival.
Wow.
They just come.
Yeah.
I'll go through spells when I just as dry as a bone and can't, don't do any writing, and then all of a sudden I'll sit down and they'll just start happening. And the better ones, if I might categorize them as better ones, they usually are the ones that are the easiest. They just happen within a few minutes, and that's it. It's over. It's done.
Oh goodness.
No laboring.
It's just like it's seems like it's like a gift.
Well, it would have to be for me to be able to do it, because I mean, it's not smart enough.
I think there's those who disagree with that, but do you, when you feel you have one, or do you pick up an instrument and fool with it?
It's different different ways. I
see.
write differently. Most of the time, the way I write, I would pick up a guitar, or I would sit at a piano, strike a chord, and open my mouth. And sometimes it just begins and happens. The way that I really have to do it is to have a tape recorder handy when I do that, because I can never ever remember or duplicate what happened the first time.
Wow.
So if I've got a tape deck, then I'll go back, and I'll, if I think that then I'm onto something, then I will listen to that and write verses or choruses that correspond with what I'm doing. So I kind of have to put it down right in. I can't work on a line and come back later to it. I just wouldn't know where I was or what I was doing. I'd be lost. So it kind of happens all in one shot.
Do you ever have in mind, I want to write on this subject, or this piece of scripture, or this something? It's something that might not be safe.
Yeah, well, I know what you're saying, and I have run across thoughts like that I would really like to write a song about, and I've had people to give me thoughts and ideas for a song. Sad to say, they never materialize. And even a lot of times, the things that I would like to write about never materialize. However, there must be a connection there, because I've written songs just in the same manner that I just told you, like sitting down the piano, striking a chord, and begin. Now, I might sound stupid to some people who are listening or even talking about it, but just start singing, and in that process comes a thought that certainly is biblically related and stuff that I have read maybe many times. But somehow or another, they just seem to come out in songs at various times. I don't sit down and say, hey, I'm going to write about the high priest and come up with a song, because I remember I wrote one called Priest Step Aside. Like when Jesus, the thought was when Jesus, he died on the cross, basically what it would say, you don't need a high priest, the high priest has come. It was our supreme sacrifice. And so that particular song, I didn't sit down to write that song. I sat down to write, and the Lord gave me that song, of which, of course, I had read about it, and the fact that I had knowledge into what I was reading helped put it together. But I didn't sit down saying, hey, I'm going to write one about the priest. I just can't do it like that.
Wow. Well, when you're traveling and singing and all, was that when it was called the Singing Nelson Family?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it started out, we let people give us names.
Yeah.
They just kind of stick with you. We started out first I was kind of always embarrassed of this, was Clint and the Nelson family. I never did want my name out front like that, but that's how we started. And if I could run across some album covers and show you, that's how some of them are titled.
I'd like to see those. Go ahead. And then, and now at some point, I'm just trying to figure out how, because I know I've seen a tape now that had your mother, your wife, your son, and Derek, your nephew, on it. So I know that they must have changed, incorporated over a number of years.
Like I said, basically we started out singing, me and my wife and Joy. And then we started adding instruments, various instruments like drums and bass, and they were mostly based home when we traveled in evangelism. But when we went to churches around locally, then the whole group would go at times. Now, Derek came into the picture, and I think the Lord really placed him there because, he knew what was going to happen. Mom was weren't going to be with us always. And I'm not sure of the year, but he was with us a few years before she passed away. But that gave him time to get settled in, and in learning the material. Of course, it didn't give me much time to practice piano.
Yeah.
Because see, I really weren't playing. I really weren't playing keyboard.
I see.
It was kind of a must because I knew that Mom, wasn't going to be with us unless the Lord undertook for her. So I started working on piano and chording. Just kind of playing a little.
Did you play guitar with the group when it first performed?
Yeah.
I see.
Guitar was my instrument, and that's what I played. But it's kind of hard to find. I always try to have it so self-sufficient that if somebody got sick and couldn't go, we could still go. You always gotta be prepared, and so it worked out. It worked out pretty good. I mean, I wasn't the best piano player in the world, but I could get by, and the Lord helped me with that. After Mom passed away, then I got a little more experience, but still can't play.
Wow. Whose idea was it to go on the road and to take the group to the different was this? I'm just wondering if Reva Pearl, if this is something she'd always wanted to do, maybe.
Mom, this was something that Mom always wanted to do herself. Yeah. She had always felt that call to work for the Lord in music, and that was her goal and dream is to travel, and she did early on to a certain extent with her brother and another lady.
The Ruby D.
Ruby D. Okay. Started out, and that was always her goal. And I think when I came along and got involved with the church, that was my goal also, because music has always been such a vital part of my life, whether I was in the world or in the church. I wanted to be involved in music. Just happened so when the Lord changed my life and turned my heart around, I just turned my music around.
Yeah,
so
right.
I was wanting to be involved in music in some sort, and that's always been my dream to travel and and to sing for the Lord.
That's great that you were able to help her with that make it all possible.
Yeah.
Really sounds like
with her dream, I think she I don't know if she had totally seen her dream, but she saw enough of it that I think she was very pleased.
One more thing about when y'all started out and singing, are there any songs in particular that might have come from the church or from your mom in particular that really stand out in your mind that when y'all first started singing together like that?
Well, there's many songs, but one song that we have sung that I think that has blessed as many people as anything we've ever done is a song called "The Lighthouse." We've been singing it ever since I started. I heard the song. Matter of fact, I'll tell you the first time I heard it. A few years after I got saved, what happened was we went to a quartet convention in Nashville, Tennessee.
Wow.
Me and my family, mom, dad, and the Happy Goodman were singing, and they sung that song, "The Lighthouse." And of course, we thought it was the prettiest thing that we'd ever heard in our lives, and just the place was, there was 15,000 people there that night, and I don't think there was a dry eye nowhere to be found. And I said, if we can get a hold of this, we want to try to do this, and we've been singing it ever since.
I'll tell you, that's something.
It's a good song, great song.
Yeah, it really speaks to the people out here too.
Oh yeah, I think that's the reason we relate so much, because
Yeah.
of our location.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's great. You told there about that one, just about the city that you added a little part to, giving that old time religion. I know there's probably tons of songs like that you might have added something to. That's just one I know about. Do you know how that happened? Or Old Time Power?
Well,
Yeah, Old Time Power.
That particular song, we had trouble finding that. Well, matter of fact, we've never found who wrote that part of it, the verses.
Okay.
That was just something that we'd always heard. My mom would sing it.
Mm-hmm.
It was very good verses. But I felt like that for what we were doing, and it was a little short just by singing the verses, and it needed a little something different, something else, and. So I wrote that little chorus, give me that old time power, and it seemed to fit pretty good, and folks enjoyed it.
That's great. Well, let's see. For a while, your son sang with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you were saying did he start really young, just like you did?
Yeah. Yeah, he started playing. I taught him how to play bass when he started playing when he was probably 6.
Oh my goodness.
He asked me to teach him, and what I did was I said, no, I'm going to write a little chart out here of all these notes on this neck of this bass guitar, what they are, and when you can come to me and I say, show me a D, show me E, C, and all that stuff, I'll teach you how to play a song. Well, in about a day, he was back. He said, I know. And so what I did then was I wrote the words down to the songs that we were singing, and I put the chord over the word when it changed.
Mm-hmm.
And he began to compile him a book, and he started playing with us by that book. That's how he played. And one day we was playing to a church over on Salter Path, and we got through playing. We packed up and left. And Nathaniel said, Dad, where's my book? I said, I don't know. I didn't get it. We could never find it. But from that point on, he didn't need it. So he just picked it up, and today he's a fantastic bass guitar player, doing a little different than what I'm doing. What happened was, of course, he got a little older, and he kind of went to do his own thing, and he went off to college for a while and kind of got out of the church deal. And he's what it is, it's just like I was. It's a choice he has to make, and he has to decide within himself when he wants to return, and I suspect that he will.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's wonderful that there was a time that your mother and your son and your wife, all the generations were.
Yeah, I have a couple videos.
Oh.
That we that just tape with a camcorder, sort of set up. Sometimes that we played, and it's pretty neat.
That's great.
To see how everybody's changed and aged.
Yeah. Oh gosh. How many records did you make?
As gospel or?
Yeah.
Let's see. Amy, I'm not sure, but I probably would not be too far off by saying 14 or 15.
Oh my goodness. That's been putting out at least one a year.
Yeah, we usually and there was a couple times we have done like 2 in a year.
Oh yeah. Did you write all the songs that you all sang?
Probably 8 or 9 albums, all the material's mine.
My goodness.
The ones before that, when we first got started, was just kind of singing everybody else's songs.
Mm-hmm. That's something. Wow. What else is that? Oh, I see. Now, after your mother passed on, how did you come to have the trio that you had today? Was there a break?
What happened? Me me and Derek and Joy, we continued, and we traveled. Of course, Nathaniel was still playing bass. And then we just things started getting kind of slack, and we just kind of backed off for a while, and we stayed out of it for 2 or 3 years. And we decided that we wanted to travel again. My wife said, "Look, I'm staying home with a girl. You just go ahead and do it this time." And about that time, Keith, who used to play drums for us, see, he said, "Look, I'd like to try for that spot." And of course, I always thought the world of him, and he was first on the list, so I couldn't think of anybody better to have with me than Keith. And it seems to work out real well. We sure have had some good times together since then.
How long has it been that you have this trio?
About 1.5 years.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
maybe 2 years. Not over that anyway.
Now you all just put out a CD, or it's just about here? Is it at the factory? Or?
The CD was about 6-7 months ago, but we do have a brand new cassette, which should be in any day. We haven't had CDs made of this one yet. We probably will, but not right now.
No.
But it should be in any day, and we're kind of excited about this one.
Yeah. Will that be the second one that this group has made?
Actually, the third.
Third?
Yeah.
Wow.
The one was a Christmas tape,
good.
of which this summer we're going to put together another Christmas album. So
I'm starting to run out of time, but I completely forgot to ask you about the studio. How on earth did you get to have this fantastic studio in your backyard?
It's funny that you asked that question. As Mom had a dream of traveling, I say always. Well, matter of fact, I guess ever since I've been involved in music, to have a studio. Back when I was in rock and roll, I'd buy little tape recorders and just, kind of tape and do demos and stuff like that. Well, when we decided not to travel any longer, we had a bus. We had an Eagle. And a friend of mine said, "I will trade you my studio for that bus."
Oh my goodness.
Some equipment he had.
It's a big old bus, right?
Big bus, like the Trailways.
Ooh, wow.
And I said, "Okay, I'll do it." I don't have any of that equipment any longer.
Oh no.
But that's how I got started.
Then you had to build a room to put the equipment in?
Then I built this place.
Gosh, have you added on to this place, or was it?
No,
you made one.
I just started from ground floor here.
Now, how did it come to that you accompany yourself all on using the computer and all that?
Okay, this last time going out, since we started back this time, we wanted to do something simple that was effective. We wanted to cut down on the number of people that had to travel for cost purposes, because we had decided, and we're approaching this thing. Of course, we've never done it for money. We've never charged a church to go play, but we decided that whatever doors were open, whether there was any money in it or not, and that, of course, that's never been the case. So what we wanted to do was keep it so cost effective, number one, that we could do that. So by keeping it down, we'd had to have some kind of way to have music.
Right.
See, I have kind of a unique little setup here where I use a computer a lot. Now that scares a lot of people sometimes when you mention that you do a lot of music on computers. I don't do it all on computers. But what I do is use that keyboard as a controller, which I have some modules that have sampled sounds in it. In other words, they take a grand piano and they sample it. And I have a similar sound as a grand piano on that. but I have to play it. I play it on the keyboard like you would play. You know, of course,
Yeah.
a keyboard is just like a piano, just a little